One second, let me just introduce.
Yeah.
2 minutes.
So our next speaker, thank you very much, Professor Chandran Sarkar. I just wanted to mention that ICHRRF had conducted a very comprehensive special hearings on human rights abuses in Bangladesh. This was about 3 years ago, and we published the full special hearings. You can find the book out there on the book table, so please do take a look at it. Wanted to welcome also Mahmoud Maroon. Very honored to have him. He was with the Afghan Archives under President Ashraf Ghani. Very honored to have you. Our next speaker, Rahul Sur, his topic of presentation is Sharia violence against women and the violation of their human rights. Mr. Sur, he's a former IPS Indian Police Service officer and a former United Nations official with a 40-year track record of effective service at the national and international affairs levels. He served in various places, both in India as well as abroad, working against drug trafficking. He took premature retirement at the rank of Inspector General, and in the United Nations he served in the Office of Internal Oversight Services, both at its headquarters and at field locations. I won't go into a lot of the details, but I'll just hand it over right now so that he has maximum time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted and honored to be here and to be invited by ICHRRF for this very important event, which is the third one. I'd just like to start by saying that today a woman has won a Nobel Peace Prize, but at the same time I'd like to recognize another woman who actually has said that she's going to introduce banning the burqa and the niqab, and that is the Prime Minister of Italy. And therefore she has introduced this law in Italy, and it's a very significant thing because what we are going to be talking about is the Sharia and Islamic law. Okay. So, next please.
Please take to the microphone.
So, the importance of the issue is undoubted. If you have a look at the United Nations resolutions, you will find that there are many, many resolutions in this issue, and there have been very frequent resolutions of this, and it is at the top of the international agenda. This is not new. This has been happening since Beijing, and there is a special report by the Secretary General of this. There are reports by the Security Council on gender mainstreaming by the Security Council. Consequently, at least on paper, the issue of violence against women is an important one. Next. What am I going to cover in this and what I'm not going to cover? We are going to be covering the gross, reliably attested and continuing violation of women's human rights caused by Sharia. We are not going to be covering attempts which have been made to reduce their impact and also the theoretical aspects of it, although there are many of them. Next. Some of the topics which we are going to cover are overview of the Sharia, the International Human Rights Framework, Sharia-linked gender-based violence, first on non-Muslim women and then on Muslim women, impact of Islamic culture on women's human rights, and finally some observations. Next. For the sake of definition, I will go with the one which is provided by the United Nations, which is gender-based violence includes any harmful act perpetrated against a person based on socially ascribed gender differences between males and females. Consequently, it is not only physical violence we are talking about, but much more extended. In terms of literature, you will find that there is widespread acknowledgement of Sharia's adverse impact on women's human rights. Literature is full of that. Next. So what is Sharia? Sharia essentially is Islamic law, and it is the fundamental part of Islam. It is seen as an expression of God's command for Muslims. It constitutes a system of duties that are incumbent upon all Muslims by virtue of their religious belief, and also a comprehensive code of behavior that embraces both private and public activities. As you know, Islam claims for itself that it is a comprehensive system which governs all aspects of your life. So there is no distinction between religious and political and social, economic and sexual. It covers all of them. And that is very, very important, because once we say, quote unquote, political Islam, that is like saying wet water. It is unnecessary because it is intrinsically political. Some Sharia provisions relating to women, Quranic verses, for instance, 4.34 is a very contested and a very a verse which attracts a lot of attention, which makes men in charge of women and gives a husband a right to strike his wife in case he fears arrogance from her. Surah 4.11, women inherit less than men. Others, 4.3 makes it impermissible for a Muslim woman to marry a non-Muslim. Surah 65.4 allows child marriage, and Surah 4.23 allows cousin marriages. The prescription for the punishment for adultery is flogging. And according to a statistical analysis which has been done by the Center for the Political Study of Islam, 71% of the Quran's text about women gives them the lower status, and 91% of the Hadith gives a woman lower status than man. These are statistical figures. Next. Now, when we are thinking about this, there is a tendency that you might have that, let me introduce my personal judgment in it. That is not the way to go. When you're thinking about Sharia, you have to evaluate it against international norms. After all, it does not depend upon a person's likes or dislikes. And the norms which I put out on the screen are the international norms. These are accepted by all countries. There is no discussion about them. It is a separate matter that international law can be a weak law, but that doesn't mean that it is not law. So one of the fundamental things, of course, in this is the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, which is the CEDAW. And there are many others, and I've listed some of them. The Beijing Platform of Action identified ending violence as one of the 12 priority areas for action. Next. Now, interestingly, many Muslim countries exempt themselves from the full application of CEDAW. And these are called reservations, right? Reservations essentially says that I have signed on to the convention, but I am not going to follow Article 1 or 2, which is related to women's equality in marriage. And it has been pointed out that this is very contradictory, because you cannot enter into a treaty which says I'm going to treat women equally, and then in the next sentence you say no, I cannot treat her equally because of what? Because of Sharia. Remember, this is a very important point, that the reason why they cannot implement CEDAW fully is because of Sharia, and this is their right. Next. So now let's have a look at some of the gender-based violence on non-Muslim women. It is a very, very depressing list, ladies and gentlemen, right? In my country, in Jammu and Kashmir, there was horrific violence against women. There were cases where live women who were living were cut alive in an iron saw. And this is something which is absolutely documented. In the UK, predominantly Muslims of Pakistani origin committed the rape of thousands of girls, known as the grooming gang scandal. For many, many years, this scandal kept simmering under the surface, and it has now come a little bit more out in the open. Just before the last election, Elon Musk had tweeted about it. There was renewed interest in it, and now they have a national inquiry on that. And now they are getting sentences, and they're getting punished. Next. In Egypt, there is a Coptic Christian community. And this is a book which I would really like you to read. It's freely available on the internet. They published in 2020 the Jihad of the Womb, trafficking of Coptic women and girls in Egypt, in which it is very similar to what we call love jihad in India, in which women are, they are first, seduced, they are flattered, they are taken away, and then they are converted. ISIS committed widespread sexual violence against Yazidi women, and the infamous case of what Hamas did to Israeli women is really, really terrible and shocking. And this has been documented by UN reports, in which women were not only raped, they were also shot, many in their vaginas, and it is such a shameful incident that it took the UN women a long time for them to say that this is what has happened. Next. Sharia-linked violence in the Muslim world. Unfortunately, it does not differentiate between Muslim and non-Muslim women when it comes to the impact. And a 2017 UN report, they said that countries in North Africa and the Muslim Middle East as the belt of classic patriarchy, where men exert power over women by controlling their bodies and mobility. We've just heard the case from what has happened in Afghanistan. It is classic: control their bodies, control their mobility, and control their voice. Iran proposed a bill to support the family by promoting the culture of chastity and hijab. It's very interesting to note that all these things, when they are done by the men in power, always invoke the safeguarding of the family. That is the reason which they give. We are safeguarding the family. If violence is allowed, it is safeguarding the family. It's a very interesting thing. Boko Haram, Dr. Adityanji referred to it. There was a kidnapping. Lots of girls were kidnapped, and there was a campaign, bring back our girls. Those girls, all of them are still not back. Next. In 2020, the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court called for a formal inquiry into war crimes against humanity in Nigeria for murder, rape, sexual slavery of children under the age of 15. In neighboring Pakistan, you have a body called the Council on Islamic Ideology. And under certain elements of progressive thought in Pakistan, they said that they want more protection for women from violence. Where did it face opposition from? From the Council of Islamic Ideology, which outlined the circumstances in which it was permissible to beat women. And they said that the bill was anti-Islamic, un-Islamic. Next. In Afghanistan, according to the Taliban, they are implementing Islamic law as acknowledged by the UN. Right? And relentless edicts since 2021 have severely restricted the rights of women and girls and suffocated every dimension of their life. Unfortunately, for political reasons, the voice of Afghan women, obviously, as we have very elegantly heard, has not been listened to. They have just been, discarded on one side. Actually, the United Nations faces a very terrible dilemma in it, that if they completely cut off Afghanistan, the question in their mind is, how are we going to give them humanitarian aid? And then on the other side, look at the condition of the women. What can we do anything about them? So therefore, they are between a rock and a hard place, and somehow say, okay, let us try to maintain some communication so that we can give something to the country, and therefore that, and this is my reading of the political situation there. Habiba will tell me if I'm right or wrong. Right. More in the Muslim world, again a UN report. The majority of Arab countries do not have laws on certain types of violence or have discriminatory laws, including on honor killing. There is another brave lady called Phyllis Chesla. Phyllis Chesla, I suggest you look her up. She's a very prolific writer. She's 85 years old, but she has an amazing brain. And she had done a survey of honor killings, and she found that 91% of the honor killings around the world were done by Muslims. And she's given the figures out there. 84% in North America Muslims, Europe 94%, in Muslim countries, of course, all of them were Muslims. Next. Now, let's come to the next issue of the impact of Islamic culture on women's human rights. Now often it is said that it's not religion, it's culture. So the answer of Srilo on that is that yes, culture does have an impact on women's rights. And consequently, what does it do? And they've had a look at this, and official UN reports, and I'm quoting from them, they said women in the Arab region face numerous obstacles influenced by deep-rooted discrimination, patriarchal attitudes and gender stereotypes. And they said the man's right of disposal over her body, her watch, her use, his concealment, denial and punishment becomes all the more blatant. Next. Polygamy, of course, as you know, is permitted. And a recent outrageous example was a site in the UK called Nikahgram. Nikah means marriage in Arabic. And they were advertising, they are specifically advertising for polygamy. And they were promoting virgin brides. Next. And they had this piece of advice on their website. From those wives whom you fear ignorance, first advise them. After 1 month of advising them, and if they persist, forsake them in bed, don't have any intimacy, show them that you don't desire them, and if they persist, finally strike them lightly, not with a baseball bat, not from the very beginning, boom, no, this is gradual. This is on the website of Nikahgram in the United Kingdom. Next. Amongst the other influences of Islamic culture on women's rights are cousin marriages, which cause higher rates of genetically transmitted diseases. And the United Nations says that the example of the Prophet Muhammad's marriage to Aisha, which is said to have been consummated when Aisha was 9, is commonly used to justify child marriage. Female genital mutilation and temporary marriages are allowed in Shia Islam and exploited women. Now, this is also a very pernicious example in which a woman who alleges rape is supposed to produce 4 witnesses. And this is, I've taken this from an Islamic website. And it says, in common circumstances other than war and the like, rape does not take place unless a woman is dressed in an attractive way that incites rape. For instance, when she goes out having applied perfume and not being dressed in hijab, or when she's alone with a man, or mixing with marriageable men, or traveling without a mahram and the like. If the rape takes place in such circumstances, then the woman has partially wronged herself, as she paved the way for her to be raped. This is an Islamic website freely available on the internet. Other impacts include being forced to undergo surgery to restore the hymen. The reason being that a Muslim girl is supposed to be a virgin on a marriage night, and there must be blood out there to show that she was a virgin, and consequently if she is not, or if for various reasons it doesn't bleed, but she has to go, she's compelled to go in for surgery to show that the hymen is there, that bleeds, and therefore the man is satisfied that he's married a virgin. It impedes women's education. Although women in the Middle East have got higher levels of education, yet at the same time, the advancement is blocked. The hijab damages women's health. There is a highly contested, garment, but at the same time, they've admitted that it reduces their vitamin D, and consequently, it also reduces their physical mobility because they cannot exercise, which leaves them more prone to diabetes. Limits Muslim women from equal opportunities to participate in sports. Next. And here is an answer which is from the internet. The one Muslim girl asked, can a Muslim girl play sports? And the answer which is there on the website, which you can have a look, is, should be far removed from the eyes of men. Most concealing for women is for them to engage in sports and exercise at home, not in clubs, gyms and schools, even if there is no mixing in those places, because there is no guarantee that a woman will not be photographed by one of these devils that look out for such opportunities, which would lead to bad consequences. If there is mixing in those places, then it is obvious it is not allowed. Now, the hijab, unfortunately, has become a symbol of progressivism in the West, where women, Muslim women are shown wearing the hijab and they're considered very progressive. I think it is just progressivism ceding to regressivism and just pretending as if it is progressive. Next, observations. The UN report on ISIS crimes against Yazidis commented, it is a genocide, and you know what they had done to the Yazidi women. There was sexual slavery, they were bought and sold like chattel, and it is all there in the UN report called They Came to Destroy, and it's there on the internet. It is a genocide perpetrated by male fighters so ideologically enslaved that they believe they are committing some of the most horrific crimes imaginable. They are bettering the society in which they live. They are bettering the society in which they live. That is their mindset. Next. So, the observations are, women's rights and human rights meets its greatest challenge from Sharia. Overwhelming evidence shows Sharia responsible for gross and continuing violation of women's human rights worldwide in flagrant defiance of the norms of CEDAW and core human rights treaties. There needs to be acceptance that Sharia is the ideology that animates the violation of human rights. The fact patterns above, while only a fraction of the whole, illustrate a critical point that the perpetrators share a religion. Next. As the Quran is considered a divine origin, a final and immutable, it stands to reason that in none of its surahs can be that violate women's human rights guaranteed in core international human rights treaties can be formally and legally abrogated by human intervention. Then the question is whether half of the world's population faces a problem without a solution, which will continue to plague generations of women and girls not unborn. Next. Unless these realities are faced, the cycle of denial will continue, with millions of women prevented from living up to their full potential. Spreading awareness of the chronic dangers that women face from some aspects of Sharia ought to be the highest priority for all individuals, civil society organizations, and countries that claim to work to uphold the fight for women's rights. Thank you.